Giving your children dual citizenship is one of the greatest gifts that you can give them to build their optionality and increase their chances for not only success but happiness throughout their lives. And today I'm going to share with you one mother's story of exactly how it helped her kids. There's a woman named Jamie Davis Smith. You probably haven't heard of her, but she wrote an article in Insider, and I also saw it on Yahoo News, talking about how I got my kids dual citizenship. As a mom, I want to make sure that they always have access to the best opportunities they can get. I'm not going to read the article, but I'm going to share with you some of the most important points and tell you how you can get your kids dual citizenship, because aside from protecting your own freedom, your own wealth, I think giving your kids two or even multiple passports is a great gift for their entire future and for generations to come. Now, if it's your first time here, my name is Andrew Henderson. I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consultancy that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. That includes getting you and your entire family second citizenship, lowering your taxes, diversifying your assets. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com, and we also host the biggest and best offshore conference called Nomad Capitalist Live, open to absolutely everybody. Now, my impression, I'm just kind of picking this out from the article, is that Ms. Smith, their family are not multimillionaires, and so you don't have to be a multimillionaire to do this. There are numerous different ways to get your children dual citizenship. One is you simply give birth to them in another country. And so if you're planning ahead, most countries in the Americas, for example, not just the US, not just Canada, but pretty much every country from Mexico to Panama to Brazil will give your child citizenship just for being born there. You may be able to work your way towards at least a residence permit and perhaps citizenship yourself. And so if you're planning on having more kids, that's something to definitely consider. There are a few countries, if you're a resident of Portugal for a year, you could qualify that way for your child. There's a few others like Fiji that you could look at. But generally speaking, giving birth in Latin America. If you have someone in the family tree, you could go back and look at, of course, yourself. If you're a dual citizen, can you pass that along? I do see parents where they never thought to give their child, let's say they're Americans, but they're originally from somewhere else. They never really thought to give their kids the other one because they thought, oh, I don't have the passport for that country. But just because you don't have the passport doesn't mean you're not a citizen anymore. You go to the embassy, get a passport. And so from yourself, from your parents, from your grandparents, even sometimes your great-grandparents, there are countries in Europe that you can go back more than 3 generations. And so if you can prove that, not only potentially you, but your children could have dual citizenship. You can also obtain citizenship in the Caribbean by investment in a matter of months. You can obtain it in the European Union in Malta in about 1.5 years through a somewhat similar investment program, a donation-based program. You can obviously go and live overseas. But let's focus on what Ms. Smith talked about, which was basically she had Polish ancestors. And so that's one of the many European countries where you can go back and claim European citizenship, in this case in Poland. And her argument was that EU citizenship is one of the greatest gifts to give her American kids because now they can live in Europe, study in Europe, travel throughout Europe without being tourists, but they can just live there as long as they want. They can buy things a little bit more easily sometimes, properties, assets, start businesses, things like that, where being a European Union citizen is important. And so even though the fact that she and her children are now citizens of Poland means if they want to go and live in Germany or work in Ireland or retire in Spain, they don't need to ask anyone's permission anymore. The things that she talked about were travel, which for a lot of people who are from the West, you think travel, that's taken for granted. But certainly, if some crazy events happen in the world, there would be benefits to saying, all right, well, this country is involved in said crazy events, this country's not, I'm going to travel the world as this one. It's the classic situation where we've seen some folks where their parents were Canadian, they're American. If you had to travel in a time of chaos, you'd probably rather be Canadian. Now, you may not want to be Canadian as much now in the last year or two as you would have before, but the point is having multiple passports makes travel easier, and I've personally seen that even in my own family and among my own friends where people thought, oh, what do I need the second passport for? And then their main passport, the embassy shuts down in the country they're living in, or the country's a beef with some other country where they want to go, and it's like, oh, good thing I have this other one. School, opportunities to go to school. She talks about how she racked up over $100,000 in student debt without even really trying that hard. And so if you don't have to be European to go to European schools. They're more affordable, but certainly you get a better deal if you're already an EU citizen. Jobs, obviously, the key benefit of having U.S. citizenship is you can work in the United States, some of the highest wages in the world, right? And so when we talk to people who are very highly paid employees or very highly paid service providers, like a doctor or a dentist or someone in the IT space, yeah, they're not going to go and work the same way a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur would anywhere in the world, right? I mean, dentists in Colombia don't get paid that much, right? And so being able to work in other countries is a benefit for them. She mentioned safety. She said, hey, a lot of violence in the U.S. We see it on our television screens. I'd like them to be able to go and live in a place. You can say it's a political argument, but I want them to have safety. I want them to have lifestyle. A lot of people that we're talking to, a lot of people who are conservative, but also some people who are more liberal are saying, I don't recognize the country anymore. It's heading in the wrong direction. I don't like the people. I don't like the lifestyle here anymore. It's not for me. Well, now her kids can not only live in the United States, but they can go and live in more than 24 countries in Europe. And then from my perspective, it's just basically optionality. So these are the reasons why you'd want to give your kids second citizenship. It's not just about you, and we obviously talk about how you can use it to control your financial picture, maintain wealth, lower your taxes, have more personal freedom. Those things can all apply to your kids. And what I frequently hear when I'm talking to clients is like, okay, let's get my kids this citizenship. I'm not going to tell them to renounce their U.S. citizenship. Some parents, they do consider doing that. You can't make that choice for your child. The child has to decide, and most embassies are not going to allow a minor to renounce. It'd have to be a very kind of rare circumstance. But if your child had the ability, unless they're creating Facebook when they're 14 years old and they're a billionaire by 18, even then, a lot of the different countries' expatriation criteria, they do allow you to make a decision like right when you turn 18 and you have a little bit better terms. But if you're giving your kids the option of saying, do you want to be American? Do you want to be Polish? Do you want to be St. Lucian? Or do you want to be all of the above or 2 of the 3? You're giving them an optionality that if they decide to become entrepreneurs, they can go one way. If they decide to become a doctor, they can go another way. Whatever it is they want to do, they're going to have an option. And so some of the things that she said were that she discovered Europeans get several weeks of vacation every year, guaranteed health care, access to higher education at minimal cost, plus many countries offered subsidies for childcare and extended paid maternity leave. Fear of gun violence was not part of my daily life. Not something that a lot of nomad capitalists would say, but if you think, hey, listen, my kids may not be entrepreneurs, they may not be investors, they just want to go and get a great job and I want them to have work-life balance. Okay, that's cool. Well, you probably are going to have that more readily in Europe than you are in the United States. She says, again, I wanted to give my kids all the opportunities to do what they want as they grow older. And she basically found herself wondering if she could give them the chance to live somewhere that's different and had better opportunities. We've talked about this for the entire existence of Nomad Capitalist. You travel the world and you'll see some countries are better for certain things than others. Just whether it's financially, whether it's freedom, whether it's lifestyle in any different way. Every country has something that it's good at. There's no one country that's number one. And so you have a better understanding of where you're at right now. I have an understanding of where in the world I'd like to live. Or obviously I know I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm not going to go and get a job. And just, when I made the decision to not be a U.S. citizen anymore, I had to realize, hey, maybe I'll be a freelancer somewhere or I can get a remote job, right? But, I'm taking an option off the table for myself. But if you have kids, all right, I mean, if they're 17, maybe they've got a better idea. But if they're 7, you don't know what's going to happen. So why not give them all the options? Now, we did have a situation where somebody said, I can get them Pakistani citizenship. And I'm like, okay, let's go through the pros and cons of that. Maybe that doesn't add much optionality, certainly not in terms of jobs or school or that kind of stuff. And maybe that gives them a little bit more grief. But for most citizenships, any of the ones in Europe, we've helped people get citizenship through their family tree in the Caribbean, in Latin America, all over the world. If you can claim citizenship that's in your blood, that's generally going to be a pretty good idea. And then you can always, what she also mentions is, why not give them the chance to go back and see where, their ancestors are from, have strong ties to the countries of their great-grandparents, and spark curiosity to open the door to greater cultural opportunities. She said that employers favor hiring dual citizens because of the flexibility it gives them. And listen, if you want to get a job in Europe, it's going to be easier to be European. And so if you can get that European citizenship, don't look at it as something where, what's the value? My kids aren't entrepreneurs, they're not investors, they don't want to travel that much. I would get it, especially if it's cheap. The cost to get citizenship by descent does require a lot of paperwork tracking and form filling and bureaucracy. We've helped people with that. And you never entirely know when you start if you're going to qualify. So there's a few costs. But when you compare that to people who are saying, I'm going to go and spend $200,000 on citizenship in the Caribbean for my family and get that in 6 months, obviously the job opportunities there aren't as good. If you're doing that for yourself, hey, add the kids on. Maybe it enhances their travel privileges. It certainly gives them an under-the-radar passport to where if they want to be someone, I mean, I knew when I was 8 years old I wanted to travel all around the world. A big world map. I was always, plotting some new trip to somewhere. And so, going somewhere again as a St. Lucian is lower profile than going somewhere as an American. That's not a bad gift to give your children, even if they don't have all the job opportunities. There are universities, and including a few decent ones in the Caribbean, but that's a different kind of opportunity, right? I knew when I was 12 years old I wanted to be in business, and so having a passport that gave me the ability to change my tax situation, that changed my regulatory situation, not a bad thing to have. Now, could I have changed my mind at 12 years old? Of course I could have, but we're talking about giving your kids optionality, and it doesn't have to be Europe. If you want your kids to have that work-life balance, if you want them to be able to go kind of pivot any direction, have better travel, have access to low-cost education, have safety, then sure, Europe is there. Some people are talking about, I want my kids to have access to total freedom. So what some parents are doing is they're going around and getting residence permits in numerous different countries, some in Latin America, some in Eastern Europe, and then they're going to wait for those to mature, and they're going to hope that all those come to fruition, and they can claim citizenships even if they don't live in the country. Or they're getting Caribbean citizenship by investment. Or if they don't have European ancestry, they're going through the Maltese Citizenship program. It's going to cost give or take $1 million, but you're giving the entire family this ability to work, study, travel, play, retire in Europe. So numerous different ways to do it. We've covered it all throughout the channel. Giving your kids these gifts, you probably don't know exactly what they're going to do, especially if they're younger. So give them one where it's more of the work-life balance, the quality. Give them one where it gives them flexibility to be an entrepreneur or to be a crypto pioneer, or whatever the next thing like that is. Give them one that is close to your heart, and you reconnect with the family, and it helps them build their cultural identity. Put together at least one and possibly a portfolio of these things that opens up their opportunities. You already know what yours are. What theirs are to be determined. I think that's why doing this in advance makes a lot of sense.